For the first time in postseason history, all 4 divisional series are tied 1-1 after 2 games in Major League Baseball. Does the parity of it lend itself to even more upsets down the stretch here? We'll get into that in just a sec. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to the Tommy John Studio in New York City. I am Charlie DiSturco, and this is Green Dot Daily, coming to you live every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. BJ Cunningham hops on to break down the diamond, while Maria Marino will join me in studio to talk the WNBA. We've got a Game 5 winner-go-home between Minnesota and the Sun. More on how to bet that one in just a second. But we have to start in the NFL, where the New York Jets have officially moved on from Robert Saleh after Week 5's loss to Minnesota. The Jets fell to 2-3 on Sunday, with the season slowly unraveling. Saleh was first to go. He finishes his 3-plus-year tenure 20-36 with the second worst ATS record since being hired in 2021. In that span, Saleh has had 6 different quarterbacks start under center, and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich will now take over interim duties for the rest of the season, at least presumably so, as we welcome in Chad Millman and Simon Hunter of The Favorites to discuss more about the breaking news, or I guess just, the news circulating the NFL world right now. Chad, I'm going to kick it to you first. Your immediate reaction after waking up this morning and seeing this news.
Well, my immediate reaction was, does it really matter who the interim coach is? Because Aaron Rodgers is running that team, and it's been clear the entire season, every awkward interaction between the two of them, that Aaron Rodgers would then casually brush off in his press conferences, that Robert Saleh would try to thread the needle on nuancing why it's not a big deal, that him and Aaron Rodgers are miscommunicating and saying they're communicating fine, a combination of defensiveness and enabling Aaron Rodgers throughout the first 5 weeks of the regular season. It's been a combination of torture and comedy trying to watch Robert Saleh explain away the disconnect between him and Aaron Rodgers. And unless Aaron Rodgers is all of a sudden going to decide, yeah, we're going to start incorporating more play action into our offense and execute a more modern NFL offense, Robert Saleh is not going to be the difference in this team salvaging a season.
Yeah, I mean, the refusal to do motions and all that, totally agree that the offense needs some framework redone, and yet Saleh and Aaron Rodgers were absolutely not a match made in heaven, maybe in hell. Simon Hunter, your thoughts, your immediate reaction to the news as well.
Pretty shocking, honestly. I don't really know how it's his fault that this team isn't playing well right now. I feel like it's all on Rodgers. It wasn't his fault that Rodgers couldn't make a completion when they needed it against Denver. Same thing against the Vikings. He dominated the Vikings offense defensively. That game was Rodgers' fault. I mean, he had Wilson at the end streaking down the sideline, and he missed him wide open. Like, there's a bunch of things that I could put on to Rodgers. I don't know if I can blame the head coach for a lot of their issues right now. So, to me, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, they had, the ability to go after Bill Belichick this offseason, or Vrabel this past offseason, and they passed on it, and now they're firing him 5 games into. So, the Jets are going to Jets. It's just dysfunction and chaos, and it all starts at the top, right? The ownership is kind of been the issue right now, the Jets, the last 10, 15 years, and I think that continues here today.
Right. The news obviously circulating about the firing came decision from the front office. Now, if it's the front office and ownership and not Aaron Rodgers, that remains to be seen. And the defense in general, I know Jordan Schultz reported that the defense was completely caught off guard by the news, and it felt a little premature, as you mentioned, Simon. Something kind of needed to change, but does a midseason firing really change anything at all? It's still ultimately Aaron Rodgers struggling. But speaking of, change possibly coming to New York, well, definitely with Ulbrich now as the interim head coach. Davante Adams was the favorite to land in New York last week when odds came out and he had requested a trade out of Las Vegas. I'm curious if you guys think that this move either helps or hurts Davante Adams' chances, or if it's kind of one of those like, well, we're making one significant change, we might as well put all our eggs in one basket and get Davante Adams. Chad, I'll kick it to you first.
I don't think it has an impact on whether or not the Jets are going to go after Davante Adams. The only thing that matters about going after Davante Adams is if Aaron Rodgers says we want to go after Devontae Adams, right? Like he's not connecting with Garrett Wilson. The only player he's connecting with is Alan Lazard, who's a mediocre receiver at best, but he's getting the lion's share of the targets because that's who Aaron Rodgers is most comfortable with. They got Nathaniel Hackett because Aaron Rodgers said, we want him. Again, referring back to what we talked about earlier, Charlie, they're not running motion. They're not running play action. That's what offenses in the NFL are doing today. That's not what the Jets are doing with Nathaniel Hackett because Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to do that. So if Aaron Rodgers is all of a sudden going to say, you fired the coach, now get me the receiver, because if we don't get the receiver, it's not really going to matter. I can't be at my best. They're going to do everything they can because they're so invested in Aaron Rodgers. So I think the only thing that matters is, does Aaron Rodgers want Devontae Adams?
Simon, are you in lockstep with that?
Yeah, it's why at this point, why not? You guys have burned the boats. There is no turning back. You are stuck where you're at now at this point. So keep digging the hole deeper. I mean, if the goal is to win this division and make the playoffs, if that is the end goal of this ownership, why not go get Devontae Adams? Like Chad just said, your best receiver this season is Lazard. I mean, as crazy that sounds, he has outplayed Wilson in almost every game they've been in. So I'm with Chad. It's like you got no other option. No way does this fix anything in my mind, but it's not going to hurt the team. We've seen their chemistry is off the charts. So I'd make the move. Just go get them. It's already all bad right now for this Jets team.
Well, you mentioned, it makes sense for them to kind of go. You might as well go all in and get Devontae Adams. And you mentioned, the goals eventually to make the playoffs. The Super Bowl was a thought of an attainable goal in the preseason. Simon, I'll kick it to you again here. Do you have any interest in investing Jets futures? They're 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, about plus 114 to make the playoffs. Or is this just a sinking ship regardless of what happens?
Yeah, we talked on our show, me and Chad, about how we weren't touching any type of futures in that market for Super Bowls with this team. And the big reason was Rodgers in his career, when everything was perfect, always found a way to lose those close games in the playoffs. So to me, we've kind of seen him take a step back, right? He's not the quarterback he was before the injuries, during those MVP runs. He's entering into a new era in his kind of career. And that era, to me, does not win games in Kansas City in January or goes to Baltimore and wins games. I have a hard time trusting him when there's other teams I have more faith in that their style of play is going to translate better come January. So, yeah, to me, there is no value right now in betting Jets futures.
Chad, your thoughts in general, is it worth maybe a ticket on them at plus money to make the playoffs, or even in those big moments late in the season, will Rodgers come up short?
Yeah, I'm not wasting my money on the Jets right now. I'd honestly be more inclined to buy into Joe Burrow and the Bengals to win the Super Bowl than I would be with the Jets, even at 1-4 with a historically 5.6% chance to even make the playoffs at this point. At least Joe Burrow was playing like an MVP, right? Leading the league in touchdown passes, one of the best in EPA at the quarterback position. Like, they need to get their defense right. But I still think there's an opening for them. I think the Jets don't have the roster, the talent, or the coaching right now.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. Funny, though, that double, maybe even tripling down on the Cincinnati Bengals as they continue to lose these close games. It's a bit tilting, to say the least. I will ask, you said you're not going to invest any money on the Jets. I'm assuming, Chad, that means Monday Night Football against the Bills. The firing felt like one last-ditch effort to kind of salvage the season, maybe rah-rah the team up for an underdog home spot against division rival Buffalo Bills. All that to say, do you bet on the Jets?
100%. This is when you bet on the Jets. I'm not wasting any money on the futures, but we got a rah-rah spot at home, division underdog. This is exactly when you want to bet on the Jets. It might have been a tough bet to pass on even before the firing, but you're going to get one shot to sort of have the rally and do something special in a home game in prime time against a Bills defense that is definitely struggling, definitely troubled in the middle of the defense. We've seen that the past couple of weeks. That's at least one thing we know Aaron Rodgers can do, is maneuver defensive backs and maneuver linebackers, especially of lower quality like the Bills have, to get players into position to make good catches in the middle of the field.
Simon, are you in agreement with this one? Are you okaying the Jets as a dog at home?
Yeah, we've seen in Josh Allen's history the one team he struggles with in this division is this Jets defense, right? They match up really well against what this Bills offense wants to do. So, Chad, we're in lockstep here. I was really hoping this was going to stay at +3 by the time our show got on, but now I'm checking the lines. It's already going down to +2.5, +2 at most books. So I think most professionals have the same view as me and Chad is this is a big bump for this Jets team. Already in a good spot playing against a Bills team with, they're saying Josh Allen doesn't have a hand injury, but I think all of us watched that game. We know that something just seemed a little off with him. So in my opinion, this is a nice spot to already fade a banged up Bills team. It just got even better now back in this Jets team in a really fiery week.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, the Jets in a rah-rah spot here. I mean, we saw last year, week 1 at home, even without Aaron Rodgers, the Jets were able to have that miracle punt return touchdown to beat them in Meadowlands, or MetLife, I should say. So, yeah, I agree with you guys on this one. Before we let you go, though, we have to get a best bet, a look ahead. Enough of this Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets talk. Chad, you're going to Detroit, Dallas. The Lions are slight favorites here on the road, and you like them to roll.
Yeah, I don't love backing short favorites on the road, but this Lions team to me continues to improve even when they haven't been getting great quarterback play from Jared Goff. And that is because they are so strong at the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. They're a top-ranked defense. They're a top-ranked offense. They're a top-ranked offense because of what they've been able to do with their run blocking and their pass blocking. They're a top-ranked defense because of what they're able to do with their pass rush, especially Aiden Hutchinson. I think against the Cowboys, we don't know what Micah Parsons' status is going to be, so it's going to be a limited defensive opportunity in terms of rushing the passer for the Cowboys. And I also like what the Lions can do offensively against what is literally the worst run defense in the NFL. This will play to the strengths of the Lions. I do believe they want to continue to be a more physical offense with Dan Campbell and get out of putting the ball in Jared Goff's hands and forcing him to be the reason they win games. So I like the opportunity, and I like the spot, and I like the matchup for the Lions.
Simon, this is great. Cincinnati Bengals, New York Giants in MetLife. Chad was mentioning maybe more interested in investing in the Bengals futures than the Jets. Well, they're 3.5-point favorites here on the road, and you like the home team to cover here.
Yeah, the primetime Sunday night game. And, the only reason I'm taking this right now is just in case professional money does come in and bump this down to 3. But you might be all right waiting, right? The public is going to make this the biggest tease game. Everyone's going to have this in the parlay. There's no way Cincinnati is going to start the year 1-5 at this point. So I think everybody's going to be out fading this Giants team, where I have the view of this Giants team's pretty good. They know exactly what they want to be and how they can handle each game. And looking at this matchup, there's many ways for Danny Dimes to attack this Cincinnati defense, not just through the read option run game, which they did really well against Seattle, but through the deep ball. So to me, little birdie is whispering that Neighbors should be back at this point. So I'm just going to grab it right now just in case Neighbors does get cleared and this does move down by 0.5 point.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants really, you look at their record, they're 2-3, but a close loss against Washington where they probably win if they have any healthy kicker on the roster. And then Dallas, even, that one was a close game as well. That was kind of a coin flip. So playing great football despite being 2-3, definitely worth a look on primetime. You mentioned it. The Bengals are going to be among the most public bet teams. But Chad Millman, Simon Hunter, appreciate you guys hopping on, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with no breaking news in the world of the NFL. Over to the Diamond, and the NLDS Game 3s are on tonight. Let's take a look at how the market report stands ahead of these two games. First up, Phillies, Mets in just a couple of hours. The Phillies are garnering nearly 2/3 of the money on their run line. They are the slight favorites in this one, despite the Mets returning home tied up at 1 apiece. And then over in LA and San Diego, surprise, surprise, the Padres getting just over 50% of the handle on their spread as well. They are, more heavier favorites with Michael King taking them out over Walker Buehler. And then, of course, overs. That's the name of this game. Over 7, over 7.5, both generating the majority of money, with both getting 80% of the tickets as we welcome in BJ Cunningham to talk more about the NLDS Game 3s tonight. BJ, before we get your best bets in each of the game, I want to play a little to hit or not to hit. That is the question. I've got 3 guys for you that I think might have some value on them not getting a hit. We'll start with the Mets-Phillies game. Jesse Winker to not get a hit at -110. He is batting 167 in his career against Nola, and I'm not a guy that's like, look at the prior history, but when you dig deeper into Aaron Nola, he actually has reverse splits, slightly better against left-handed hitters in general, 236 average this season. And I think the kicker here, and you'll kind of see the trend throughout, Winker's in a platoon. If a lefty comes up and he's at the plate, he's getting taken out for JD Martinez. I'm not sure if he'll get the start or JD will, but if he starts, I think to not get a hit at -110's a solid bet. What are your thoughts in general?
I agree with that. Obviously the Phillies have a lot of left-handed relievers in their bullpen, and Winker, specifically against Nola, I think the reason why he struggled is because he's not very good at hitting breaking pitches. This will be a theme when we get into the best bets, but career versus knuckle curves and curveballs, Winker only has, a 150 expected batting average. He only has 2 hits off of curveballs this season, so pretty decent matchup here. And again, the Phillies are going to have a lot of lefties coming out of that pen, so I like that.
All right, a 1-for-1. Let's see if we can make it 2-for-2 in this game. The next one I got for you, even uglier than Jesse Winker. How about Johan Rojas to not get a hit at -120? Against lefties, he's batting .212 this season, and he's not very good at the sport, if we can be frank, except for his defensive prowess, which is why he's in all the time. But another guy that I think he's batting 9th first off, so he probably only gets to see 3 plate appearances. And come that second, even third time around, if we're getting in a high leverage spot, Rod Thompson's going to be quick on pulling him if the game's close for a better hitter. So I think at -120, we're getting some good value here on him not to get a hit, given the fact that he might only get 2 at-bats. What are your thoughts on this one in general? Are we 2-for-2 or are we pushing back a bit?
Yeah, let's go 2-for-2 because, on top of everything you already said, he's been in the postseason a while now. He has a 109 batting average in the postseason the last couple seasons. So, like you said, he's going to be hitting 9th. He's there for his defense. If the high leverage spot comes in, they're definitely going to pinch hit for him. So, yeah, I agree. 2-for-2.
Yeah, I think he's going to also potentially bunt. Like, I don't think there's much situations where Rojas is swinging away. He's entering Aaron Judge postseason territory by how bad he's performing. But the last one I got for you out in LA, San Diego matchup. This one's a bit more uglier. David Peralta to not get a hit. It's +120. The other guy that I think, following the same thought of Jesse Winker, we got a lefty against a righty against Walker Buehler. By the way, he's 7-for-31 in his career against Walker Buehler, that is, David Peralta. And he's batting most likely in the 8th spot. Also a guy that's going to probably get taken out in a high leverage situation if a lefty comes on, say, Vesia for Cronenworth, and then he's still up. They're going to go to Donovan Solano. So I like David Peralta to not get a hit here at plus money. Think another guy, bottom of the order, 2, maybe 3 plate appearances. I don't know if the books are accounting for that. Do we have a clean sweep, or are you going to push back on this one?
I think it's a clean sweep. I'm in the middle. I don't know. We maybe call this like 2.5 out of 3. The thing is that, like you mentioned, when he's going to face a lefty. Well, the Dodgers have 2 lefties in their bullpen. In Game 2, Banda came out right away, and then Vesia was the second out of the bullpen in Game 1. So if they get to that situation, like you said, he's going to be hitting 8th, then I don't know if he's potentially going to start over Donovan Solano. So I'll call it 2.5 out of 3. I'm right in the middle there.
Okay, I'm hoping like a Vesia comes in for Cronenworth, gets Cronenworth. Yeah. You take out Solano, you keep him in until you get to Tatis at that number 2, because then you get a lefty-lefty with Arise at the top. That's kind of where my thoughts are if they want to plan it right. Vesia is also a guy that can go multiple innings. So hoping on that front, we'll call it 2.5 out of 3. It's definitely the uglier one at plus money. But of course, to hit or not to hit, that's a fun game. But the real question, BJ, is your best bets. We got the Phillies and the Mets first up in just under a couple of hours here. The Phillies slight favorites, a total right around 7. Where do you like, or how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I do like under 7 runs at anything plus money right now. If you look at Aaron Nola, how he's pitched over to the end of the season, he's actually pitched very, very well. In September, he had a 2.56 xFIP, and his strikeout per 9 rate was at 12, which is significantly higher than any other month throughout this season. He's going to have a great matchup here against this Mets offense because he primarily utilizes that knuckle curve, and it's his best pitch by far, generating almost a 38% whiff rate. Opposing hitters only have about a 250 expected weighted on base average against it. If you know anything about the Mets lineup, they drill fastballs better than most any team in baseball right now, but they're actually below average in terms of expected weighted on base average against any type of breaking pitch. So I think it's a decent matchup for Nola if he can utilize that curveball a lot. I know he faced the Mets in September and gave up 6 runs, but if you look at his xFIP from that start, it was only around 2.5. So he was pretty unlucky to give up that many runs. So I think it's a decent matchup for him. The flip side, Sean Manaea has really, really improved over the second half of the season, has a 3.75 xFIP, and the improvement that he's made is with his sinker. It's the main pitch that sets up his entire arsenal. He throws it more than any other pitch. The stuff plus on that pitch has gone from 89 to 104 in the second half of the season. So if he's able to utilize that sinker, he should be able to neutralize this Phillies lineup. And I know these two bullpens have kind of blown up in games 1 and 2, but these were 2 top 6 bullpens throughout the entire season of baseball. So and I honestly think both these starting pitchers will be given a longer leash because we have back-to-back days, and with game 4, most likely those teams are going to empty their bullpens in that one. So with both these starting pitchers having decent matchups here, I think the total's a little bit high. Obviously, if they get into trouble, the bullpens are going to come in and play here, but I projected 6.7 runs. So if you can get under 7 and anything even money or better, I think there's some value on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think the key here is the bullpen, like you mentioned. Like, yes, the first 2 games have not gone according to plan, but how many times are teams going to score, 4, 5, 6 runs in the 8th and 9th innings in general? These are still 2 of the better bullpens. Also, most likely, maybe Edwin Diaz is not, but everybody else is going to be fully available, fully rested based on just workload in general. And you mentioned Nola got hit by the Mets hard the last time out, but the start before that, he threw a complete game shutout against them. So it's not like he's not accustomed to being great against this team. There's a reason why Thompson pushed him to game 3 to play in Citizens Bank, or to play away from Citizens Bank. So I'm in agreement with you on this under as well. I put that one into the Abbott plus money. But the other game in general, and I think this is probably the more fun, entertaining one with chance of fireworks. Walker Buehler taking the mound for the Dodgers against Michael King and the Padres. The Padres minus 150, depending where you look. You like a player prop in this one, and it's surrounding Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy who's got the best possible matchup here against Walker Buehler. So let's start with Buehler. He hasn't been that good this season. He's got an ERA over 5. His expected ERA is a little bit lower, around 4.5. But he has not pitched well away from Dodger Stadium. He has an xFIP well over 5. And where he's been struggling is with his fastball. He throws it more than any other pitch, and it's allowing a 450 expected weighted on base average. So who's the best hitter against fastballs for the Padres? Well, that'd be Fernando Tatis Jr. He has over a 450 expected weighted on base average against fastballs this season. And the other 2 pitches that Buehler throws, a cutter and a knuckle curve, Fernando Tatis leads the Padres in expected weighted on base average against both of those pitches as well. And Tatis has been incredibly hot this postseason. I mean, he's already got 3 home runs in his 3 games. And against Buehler lifetime, he has 4 home runs against him. So for somebody who has a fantastic matchup here, I like Tatis over 1.5 bases at even money and to hit a homer at plus 360. I think he's got the best possible matchup of any Padre. And again, we'll see how long Buehler's leash is in this game. I think it's interesting because Landon Knack is going to pitch in game 4 for the Dodgers, and they're probably going to utilize their bullpen quite heavily. Game 1, Yamamoto came out in the 3rd inning after giving up 5 runs. They let Jack Flaherty go a little bit longer, go 5 1/3, even though he got into trouble in game 2. Do they give Walker Buehler that leash if he gives up some runs early here? I think that's very interesting. If they go to their bullpen, it sets up things pretty well for the Padres. So again, if you're somebody who maybe doesn't want to pay minus 150 for the Padres and you really like them tonight, you can find a minus 115 on their series price out there, which I think is a pretty decent spot for them, given the situation the Dodgers are in with their pitching. And Freddie Freeman might not play in this game as well, which obviously hurts the Dodgers as well.
Yeah, obviously have to keep monitoring the Freddie Freeman news with his ankle injury. It's unfortunate that the Padres don't have Musgrove, because if they did, the minus 115 series line makes absolutely no sense already. And then you add in the fact that he would have been there. Hopeful as a Padres future ticket holder. I'm hoping on that. But I agree with you on Fernando Tatis. The two guys I had circled were him and Jackson Merrill. I think both of them have pretty solid matchups. Walker Buehler in general struggles a bit with lefties. I also, if you can get down on it at home, Fernando Tatis to walk north of 2-1 is pretty interesting too. I mean, how do you pitch to the best hitter in baseball? He's either going to attack you early on in the count, or if it gets later, I don't see him getting a pitch to hit. I wouldn't be surprised for them pitching around if they're able to get Luis Ariz out and kind of forcing Jurickson and Profar to beat them in general. But BJ Cunningham, appreciate you hopping on. Enjoy the NLDS tonight, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Over to the hardwood, and let's take a look at the WNBA as the finals inch closer and closer. The New York Liberty is the first team to punch its ticket through after a 3-1 series win over the Las Vegas Aces. The Liberty avenged last year's championship loss as the Aces come up just short for a three-peat. NY is currently minus 360 at FanDuel to win the championship as they await the winner of the Minnesota Lynx and Connecticut Sun. The two have a win or go home. Game 5 tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Connecticut was able to extend the series on its home floor Sunday with a 92-82 win behind a dominant second half. But Minnesota, Nafisa Collier has seemingly woken up for the Lynx, scoring 28 points across games 1 and 2, and since then, she's scored 26 and 29 respectively. Minnesota is 4.5-point favorites tonight with a total of 151.5. So now we welcome in Maria Marino to talk more about the Game 5 tonight. But before, we have to talk about the Liberty. They get their ticket through. They're in the WNBA Finals. Heavy favorites. Feels like this is their chance, and it would be pretty upsetting and a shock for them to lose. Am I correct?
I think it would be a shock if they lost. They are the heavy favorites, as you mentioned. Yeah. But I think both of these teams, Minnesota and Connecticut, are super tough. It's not going to be an assignment that the New York Liberty take lightly. As far as who the Liberty would prefer to play, I've gone back and forth on this a little bit. I think Connecticut is the more physical team. I'm just going to say it. They're a pain in the ass to play. There's going to be a lot more just officiating issues, things like that. So I think that could be annoying, but at the same time, the Liberty have kind of owned the head-to-head matchup with the Sun, so I think they'd be super confident playing them.
Yeah.
Even though Connecticut won the last matchup in August, prior to that, New York won the last 6 straight, including playoffs. One thing that I think is going to be in New York's favor here, regardless of who they play, is both Connecticut and Minnesota are going to have to travel from Minnesota to New York, and they're only going to have 1 full day's rest in between the semifinals ending and the finals starting. So really no excuses for New York, but Minnesota's tough too. They beat them in the Commissioner's Cup, but hey, maybe that's a revenge motivation thing for New York.
Yeah.
They're familiar with that coming off of this Aces
They finally got the
win,
revenge,
and hopefully for the Liberty, it's not like a letdown spot after kind of slaying the dragon.
Yeah, hoping it's not that championship win was the semifinals win, but they can keep it going. I feel like they will. I feel like that, the entire team after last year's loss is motivated for this, and you mentioned it. The time off in general seems like a huge plus, being able to prep extra for whichever team they end up getting. But before we get to an actual pick for this game tonight, I want to talk more about Minnesota and Connecticut. Obviously, the Lynx, they're slight favorites in this one. They've gone blow for blow. It's been a ton of punches, a ton of just physicality on both sides of the ball, both able to win on the road. So when it comes to this game tonight, what is the key for both sides? Let's start with Minnesota.
Well, I'm going to start by just comparing both of these teams because I've told you before, Charlie, they're two very evenly matched teams.
Right.
And obviously, 2-2 straight up in this series, also 2-2 against the spread in this series. Coming into this series, they were the top 2 defenses in the league in terms of points allowed. And so this series is truly close. I feel like it could go either way, but I think the key for either team is actually shooting variance. So what did we see in Game 3? Marina Mabrey shot 1 of 11 from 3-point range. Connecticut lost. In Game 4, Bridget Carlton, Bridge, shot 2 of 11 from 3. Minnesota lost. So I just fear that whichever team is not making the other team pay by hitting their shots from 3 is going to have a really hard time closing out this series. But in general, Minnesota has been a team that tends to get off to fast starts. That's what they did in the last game, but Connecticut tends to play very well in the second half. So Minnesota, they need to play a complete game.
Right. We saw the Connecticut playing really well in the second half in that last game to force the game 5 in general. And then you mentioned it. Probably also helpful that Minnesota returning home where role players kind of shoot better. They're more comfortable. They have the home crowd behind them.
Makes
sense. Yeah, you would think. But again, this is where superstars are made, where nails are hammered in, like when the clutch come up. So we talk about this game. We just talked about the game in general. Let's talk about a player prop. Your best bet for tonight, and you are targeting, a player to go over her points and rebounds.
Yes, so I am targeting once again a role player, if you want to call it that, but I'm going to look to the Connecticut side. I like DiJonai Carrington to go over 17.5 points and rebounds. I like that DiJonai she can shoot the 3, but I like that she's not reliant on shooting. So even if that shot's not falling, she's so athletic that she is going to get opportunities for steals and scores. In fact, every single game in this series, she's had at least 1 steal. She's great on the boards. I mean, again, her athleticism, you really can't take her off the floor. She's gone over this mark in 5 of 6 games this postseason, 7 of her last 10 overall. And she's hit this in 6 of 7 games against Minnesota this season. What I think is really telling, too, not only is she averaging 35 minutes per game this series, I noticed that the 2 games that she played more minutes are the games that Connecticut won. So I'm hoping that Stephanie White, the coach, is recognizing that, we need to play her. But yeah, she's just one of those players that she is going to find a way to get to the basket. And because this is a winner-take-all game, I'm expecting very tight defense. I'm not expecting shots to fall. So I'm not necessarily going for a shooter here. I'm going for someone that can take it to the rim.
There you have it. I like this look. I'm going to tell you, the last time.
How can you not?
The last time I took it with you, we ended up cashing together. I think
Barely.
we got by the hook. But
Barely.
listen, a win is a win. And I like this one. 6 of 7 against Minnesota this season is a great number to show. And it feels like maybe the number's down a little bit just because they're like, well, it's game 5.
Yes,
there's going to be
on
a
the
little
road.
tensions high.
Do I hear that you're going to be tailing this with me again?
I will be tailing this with you. It will be on my screen. It'll be that, and then the Dodgers and the Padres game. I'm coming back straight from Citi Field, turning the game on, and I'll be locked in watching with you.
I love that. I hope your Mets get a win. I hope you're coming home happy, bringing the good juju home with you and watching the game, and we have a nice, enjoyable sweat tonight.
Yes, an enjoyable sweat, a good game 5, and hopefully Carrington comes up for us both.
Yes.
But Maria Marino, appreciate you. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk again soon.
You too.
And just a friendly reminder that any pick we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following us in the award-winning Action Network app under the handle @green.daily. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to be all for me on this Tuesday. Enjoy the postseason baseball. Enjoy the WNBA winner go home. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, to break down some NBA, some NFL, and of course, some postseason baseball. Have a great rest of your day, and let's go Mets.